So we are starting Unit 4. This is over the ancient Roman civilizations, and this is Lesson 1, What is Rome? If I was to ask you to tell me what a civilization is, I would hope that you could remember a little bit from when you studied the ancient Greeks in second grade. But you would tell me that a civilization is a group of people living together in a well-organized way. People in a civilization, they build cities, they have writing systems, they have leaders and laws, they practice religion, they grow their own food by farming, and have different people doing different jobs. Remember, I mentioned that you have studied about civilizations before. Those of you last year in second grade here, I know that you did the ancient Greeks. And it's possible that you may have also heard of the Mesopotamians, the Egyptians, maybe the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Incas, the Chinese. Those are just a few possibilities of some civilizations you've heard of. Now, civilizations, they occurred a long, long time ago, before we had TV and cell phones, and before we could call somebody up and get information. So exactly how do we learn about these civilizations that occurred hundreds, even maybe thousands of years ago? So, in the case of the ancient Roman civilization and other civilizations, we rely on archaeologists to provide us with information. An archaeologist is a scientist who finds clues to help us better understand those ancient civilizations. Um, Many of the accomplishments that we have today, we got from the ancient Romans. Some of those are the calendar system, our architecture, the way that we build our buildings. Some of that we got from the ancient Roman civilization. And some of the games that we play also came from the ancient Roman civilization. So these are some things that are important for you to know. So please take note of these. First, you will be hearing terms today that refer to the time when the ancient Roman civilization began. So when you hear me say BC or BCE, or you see that in any text, BC stands for before Christ, and BCE stands for before the common or Christian era. We live in a period known as AD, after death. So that was one of the things that you'll see when you're looking at times. So AD also stands for Anno Domini, which means the year of the Lord, and is described as the time after Jesus was born. The events you are going to hear about in this domain occurred both in BC and AD time periods. So we're talking about a really long time ago. So let's talk about where we are. The area that we're going to be talking about is across the Atlantic Ocean on the continent of Europe, and that's where the ancient Roman civilization developed. Many of the ancient Roman accomplishments are still with us today, and we talked about how the calendar, architecture, and games from this area are still with us. So if I look at a big picture and I think about where we live, if you'll follow my little red dot, we live right about where my little red dot is. And ancient Rome, if we was to go across the Atlantic Ocean to the continent of Europe, this is the area that we're going to be talking about as we read our stories. Okay, so it's across the Atlantic Ocean on the continent of Europe. So here is your purpose for listening. You need to be listening carefully to learn more about the ancient civilizations that developed long ago and to find out how we have gained so much information about their way of life. So, what is Rome? Rome is the capital city of Italy, which is a country in Europe. This aerial scene shows what you might see if you visited Rome today. It's a beautiful, vibrant city full of fascinating things to see and do. If something is vibrant, that means it's lively and bright. So we would expect to see Rome very lively and bright, people everywhere. You can see tons of people here in the picture. Here is something that thousands of people travel to Rome to see every year. So follow my little red dot. Everybody see my little red dot? Does anyone know what this is? It's called the Colosseum. The Colosseum. Say that to yourself. Colosseum. When you look at this picture, you might ask yourself another question. What was the city of Rome like long ago? After all, this building does not appear to be very new or in very good condition. That is because it is almost 2,000 years old. So the Colosseum that we're talking about is almost 2,000 years old. This famous building is just one of the countless remains from the ancient Roman civilization. The Colosseum was basically a big sports stadium for the Romans. However, instead of watching football or baseball, ancient Roman sports fans came to the Colosseum to watch combat sports, often involving people fighting each other or animals, sometimes till their death. The fact that their sports were so bloody and deadly might lead you to think that Romans were violent people, and they were in many ways. The Romans had some of the most powerful armies in history. But as you can see from the beauty of Roman architecture in this photograph, the ancient Romans were also incredibly creative people. Architecture is the design or style of a building. So look at this building for a minute. See these arches? Look at all these arches. I mean, the whole building is covered in archway openings. The Romans were the first to widely use these arches in many of their buildings and bridges. The arch, first used by the Egyptians and Mesopotamians and improved upon by the Romans, allows an opening of a structure, such as a window or a doorway, to be much wider because the curved wedges of stone offer more support than the flat pieces of than the flat piece of stone would. So because they've got these arches, the openings can be wider because the arches make it stronger and more sturdy. You will learn more about this and other contributions of the ancient Romans as you hear about their history, their government, art, religion, and more. Beginning with the city of Rome, the Romans built a civilization that controlled most of the present-day Western Europe, as well as large parts of present-day Asia and Africa. In yellow, this map shows the large area the Romans controlled at the height of their empire. So look at all this yellow. This is the part we're talking about. Do you see this boot-shaped country near the middle? That is the country we now call Italy. Italy is called a peninsula because it is surrounded on three sides by water, So let's count them. Here's one side, two sides, three sides. So that makes it a peninsula. This is where the ancient Roman civilization began. And from there, it spread to the north, to the south, to the east, and to the west. It took many years to build this vast empire. That is why the saying, Rome wasn't built in a day, has come to refer to the creating of something that is large or complicated and that takes much time and dedication. You're going to learn more about that common saying later. As the empire spread, the Romans also spread their culture or way of life, including their laws, art, architectural influences, language, and knowledge. Although most ancient Roman buildings are now in ruins or are completely gone, Roman culture changed the world in ways we continue to experience today. Before we go any further into ancient Roman history, let's travel outside the city of Rome into the surrounding countryside. Italy is surrounded on nearly all sides by the famous sparkling blue waters of the Mediterranean Sea. The city of Rome is situated near the Mediterranean coast, far outside the city limits of Rome, and away from the coast. The lush Italian countryside is home to rolling wheat fields, groves of olive trees, and vineyards where grapes are grown to make vinegar and wine. Like many lands close to the Mediterranean, the climate in Rome is fairly warm and sunny most of the year. Add it all together, the blue waters, the beautiful city, and the fertile countryside, and you can see that Italy is really a pretty nice place to call home. The Romans were not the first people to think the area known as present day Italy was a good place to live. In fact, the ancient Greeks had settled in parts of southern Italy. Starting around 700 BC, a civilization called Etruscans moved into central Italy. Nobody is sure where the Etruscans came from exactly, but we know they started building towns a couple hundred years before the city of Rome existed. This picture shows the ruins of a walled Etruscan city. Why do you think they built the city in that particular spot? It looks like it'd be hard to get there, doesn't it? That's the point. Despite its beauty and all the land and nearby sea that was to offer from Italy, and basically everywhere else in the Mediterranean region at the time, it could be a dangerous place. The Etruscans weren't the only people living in this region. There was always a chance that another group of people would come along and decide they wanted to call the area of present day Italy their home, or steal all of the resources they could from the people who already lived there. In those times, it was smart to build a city on a steep hill surrounded by high walls for protection from invaders. So if you look, there's a walkway here. Um, it says that this walkway in the photograph was built many years later. Remember, there were no cameras during this time. So this walkway right here that it's talking about was not built when the original structure was built because there was no way to take pictures. So this is the ancient structures up here. You can see how it's almost in ruins. A lot of it seems to be falling apart. Um, the Etruscans and Greeks were only two of several groups to settle on the peninsula of Italy. Many of these cultures would essentially be mixed together to create Roman culture. Like other people during that time period, the Etruscans were fond of stone sculptures. In some areas, the hills and mountains have large sections of hard, white stone called marble. Ancient Etruscans carved gorgeous sculptures from this marble more than 2,000 years ago. Etruscan art and architecture, such as paintings, sculpture, and building design, helped shape Roman art and architecture. These are items in a museum today. Like countless other Roman artifacts in museum collections all over the world. An artifact is an object that was created by a person who lived long, long ago. An artifact is like a door to the past. When you think about a door to the past, we're not meaning literally a door you walk through to get to the past, but instead it's a way to sort of look and to see what the past would have been like by looking at objects that were around or existed during that time. Tools, weapons, jewelry, artwork, pottery, and household items such as dishes or pots are all examples of artifacts that provide clues about people and allow us to see into the past to see what life was like then. Artifacts, along with ruins like the Colosseum, roads, and bridges, teach us the way ancient Romans lived, worked, played, and fought. Some of these remains are easy to see, like the ruins that dot the Italian landscape. Others have been buried for many years and continue to be discovered during archaeological digs. Archaeologists are puzzle solvers. They find little clues hidden in the ground, broken shards of pottery, an arrowhead, a few beads, and bit by bit they piece together a story about the people who created these things. This photograph provides an example of one of those puzzle pieces, an early Roman mosaic. A mosaic is a piece of art made of hundreds and sometimes thousands of colorful little stones carefully arranged to create a design. Sometimes a mosaic also includes small glass or baked clay pieces called ceramics. Wealthy Romans could afford to have mosaics in their homes to decorate their walls and floors. Artifacts, such as mosaics, teach us many things about ancient people. Look at this mosaic. Can you see that ancient Romans were very artistic and creative? You can also see what a Roman from that time might have actually looked like. The amazing thing about artifacts of the Roman Empire is that a lot of them have not actually been discovered in the city of Rome. In fact, many artifacts may have not been discovered in present Italy at all. This mosaic was created by Romans, but was found in present-day nation of Turkey, which straddles Europe and Asia. It was found hundreds of miles from Rome, but it was still a Roman mosaic. And how is that possible? Well, as you have heard, the city of Rome is the current capital of Italy. But during the height of the Roman Empire, about 2,000 years ago, it was the capital of a very large portion of the world. The Romans had powerful armies, and over the course of hundreds of years, they set out to conquer and rule every bit of land that they could get a hold of. The Roman Empire extended from Italy in every direction through France all the way to Britain to south south to North America, west to Spain, and east across Asia to the present-day country of Turkey and all the way to the Middle East. One thing that allowed Rome to spread so far and wide was its system of roads. In many conquered areas, the Romans built paved roads for their armies, and to make traveling and trading easier. These roads were able to last many years because they were made of concrete, a hard, strong material made by mixing water with cement, sand, and pebble, and allowing the mixture to harden. The Romans were the first to invent this particular concrete mixture that is still used in modern times. Rome became known for its many well-built roads, which created a network along which some of Europe's finest cities and richest lands developed. Some of these concrete roads still exist today, as does the saying that came from this time, all roads lead to Rome. You will hear more about this saying later in this unit too. So let's look real quick again. We were talking about where the capital is. So here is where Rome was, and you can see this is where Spain and France and Germany and Great Britain, all the way over into parts of Asia and down through the top northern parts of Africa. So ancient Rome was a pretty large civilization. Romans were also known for the frescoes they created, which are colorful pictures made by painting wet plaster on a wall or ceiling. This faded fresco was uncovered in the city of Pompeii in Italy many, many years after the city had been destroyed. Does anybody know what famous event caused the destruction of Pompeii? We'll come back to that and see if you can think about it, or if you can remember, or if you know. So in AD 79, Mount Vesuvius suddenly erupted. It was a volcano, spewing forth fire, poisonous gases, and giant clouds of ash that fell on the nearby city of Pompeii, burying everything in the volcano's wake. So how was Pompeii destroyed? It was destroyed by a volcano. And you can probably see it. All right. For more than 1,500 years, the town remained hidden until in the late 1500s, some men found a few ruins of marble and frescoes like this one while digging a canal. As more and more ruins have been unearthed, archaeologists have been able to piece together the story of this lost town and its people. Archaeologists suspect that there are still many ruins and artifacts waiting to be discovered in Pompeii and across all the surrounding area where the Romans once ruled and lived. You will continue to learn about the ancient Romans and how their culture, inventions, and many contributions are still a part of our life today. So here we can see, like I was talking, here was your volcano, I believe, in the background of our picture. And this is Mount Vesuvius. And this is part of the lost city of Pompeii. All right, so our word work today is this word ruins. And you heard me mention the word ruins several times within our reading today. You heard me say that most of ancient Roman buildings are now in ruins, which means completely gone, or that means that they are completely gone. Roman culture changed the world in the ways in which we continue to experience today. And so if I look at the definition to the word ruins, the definition, look at it with me as I read, ruins are the remains of a structure or of an old civilization, such as a broken down building, bridge, or road. So think to yourself, have you ever seen learned about, or heard about ruins? What part of speech would the word ruins be? If I said that um, I looked at the city and it was in ruins, or if I used the sentence when we were talking about Pompeii and we said the ruins of Pompeii. Okay, so I hope you said that it was a noun because we are talking about the remains of a structure. A structure is something you can touch. Therefore, if ruins are the remains of a structure, then ruins would be a noun. That is all for lesson 1.